Welcome to day 3 of GAAMAC IV, the global meeting of global action against mass atrocity crimes. My name is Claire Dool and I'm your Master of Ceremonies. So welcome to all of you who are joining us from far and wide. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. So do put comments in the chat and questions in the Q&A. Also, of course, it would be great if you could tweet. So that's using hashtag prevention pays off or the GAAMAC handle at gaamac_.org. So that would be wonderful. So let's just have a look at some of the memorable moments from yesterday and the things that were tweeted about around the world. So the discussion yesterday that the GAAMAC Chair moderated was on addressing hate speech and preventing discrimination in the European context and in the international context. And we heard from the President of the Swiss National Commission Against Racism, Martin Brunschwig-Graf, who said, monitoring hate speech is key to fighting it. You need to collect and keep it in a database and then decide how to react. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to preventing hate speech. Nana Kruse, Senior Advisor at Human Rights Denmark, said a big issue was underreporting of hate speech and securing convictions. The police, though, she said, are now better equipped to respond to complaints of hate speech. Elżbieta Kozłowska-Pasha, Senior Legal Advisor at the OSCE, said minorities, women, and women from minority groups are the most targeted, highlighting the need for better integration efforts so that they can really participate in political and socio-economic life. George Amoah, Executive Secretary of the Peace Council of Ghana, told us that the Peace Council had reached out to religious, traditional leaders, young people, the media and politicians to ensure that the 2020 elections were held peacefully. And he said it worked and that we made a difference. The coordinator at the Inter-American Institute of Human Rights, Eduardo Bettoni, said, we need punitive measures that prohibit hate speech and non-punitive measures such as public education policies. And Vititit Muntaborn, professor at Chulalongkorn University in Thailand, made many passionate interventions. He said that the COVID-19 medical lockdown led to a clampdown on political rights. He said half of the countries in Asia were non-democratic and that their laws and policies that claim to address hate speech must be rigorously checked against international standards. So those were some of the tweets that were circulating about the panel discussions. Many of you also attended one of the 5 workshops that took place yesterday. And here are some of the highlights on the Miro board. And you can see, I think what was interesting here to the question, is education the answer? Most definitely yes. But that teachers needed more training and they needed training perhaps in understanding some of their own unconscious biases when addressing hate speech in the classroom. So lots of key takeaways from that one, which I think is great. So the next Miro board that we have was good practices to address the rights for all in addressing hate speech. And there was a really very clear message, you can see it at the top here, about the fact that most of LGBTI discrimination is based on assumptions of either spiritual or moral corruption. And this correlates with the rise in ultra-conservative discourse. And the evidence shows that when hate speech goes unpunished, violence and discrimination against these groups goes up. So as you can see, that was a workshop where there was a very dynamic discussion about good practices to address the rights for all in addressing hate speech. Then the workshop about interreligious dialogue and prevention of hate speech, obviously absolutely key. Everybody saying that you've got to bring people together in these interreligious councils, and that was absolutely key, I think, there in that workshop that was held yesterday. Let's move on then to the workshop on vectors of hate speech and incitement. We've heard a lot about social media, I think, over the last few days and their role in countering, but sometimes also amplifying hate speech. And I think what was interesting here was the comment that, of course, what may be considered offensive in one country is not considered offensive in another. So it's really important to take these regional differences into consideration. And then finally, there was this workshop on ethnic minorities and religious minorities. A lot of focus here on the Roma and the discrimination against them, with the idea that the laws have improved, but segregation still exists. And the fact that there's a need not only for government and civil society to take action, but also the private sector. And I think most probably there is a need to hear more from the private sector on addressing hate speech and discrimination generally. So those are some of the highlights from yesterday, the workshops and the panel discussions. There's going to be a very interactive panel discussion that the chair of GAAMAC is going to moderate in a moment. But before we go there, let's hear from the Foreign Minister of Tanzania, Liberata Mulamula, who has this video address for us.
Members of the steering group of GAAMAC, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all, and for others, I think it's afternoon, evening, good evening. I feel privileged and honored once again to join you today, not only as a GAAMAC African Working Group patron, but also as the Minister for Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation of the United Republic of Tanzania. Dear colleagues, distinguished participants, it is satisfying for me to see the continuation of our engagement in this area of atrocity prevention, especially in times like this when the world is busy grappling with the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. During such a time, the focus of the world changes, the priorities of states change, resources are diverted, and it is possible during this time some of the indicators that can lead to mass atrocities are not given adequate attention. I therefore commend the commitment shown by GAAMAC in convening us today. On behalf of the government of the United Republic of Tanzania, I wish to reiterate our commitment to join global efforts to prevent atrocities, and of course, with our commitment to prevent genocide. I call on continued collaboration with GAAMAC and all stakeholders in achieving our common objective. I thank you for your kind attention and wishing you all successful deliberations. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, the Foreign Minister of Tanzania there, with words of encouragement and commitment to GAAMAC. So with no further ado, I'd now like to hand over to the chair of GAAMAC, Silvia Fernandez de Gurundi, who is going to moderate the next panel discussion. Silvia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you for the giving us an update of the very interesting moments that we had yesterday and an extremely busy and interesting agenda. So thank you for these updates. And dear participants, welcome to today's dedicated session of GAAMAC on the GAAMAC's regional thematic initiatives. These initiatives are a crucial component of our community. So we will start with an introductory panel, which is entitled Shaping Atrocity Prevention from the Ground Up, Good Practices from GAAMAC Regional Initiatives and Ways Forward. We are going to discuss today and highlight through this introductory panel the track record and added value of GAAMAC regional working groups in supporting and strengthening national atrocity prevention efforts and mechanisms. I am extremely pleased to be accompanied by two strong GAAMAC leaders. Ms. Mô Bleeker, who needs no introduction. You all know Mô. She was GAAMAC's former chair and currently an advisor to GAAMAC. Then we have Justice Jamila Mohammed, who is the chair of the Africa Working Group and chairperson of the Kenya National Committee on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, War Crimes, Crimes Against Humanity, and all forms of discrimination. Because of the time difference, our distinguished colleagues from the Americas Working Group and the Asia Pacific Study Group are not physically present with us today, but they were kind enough to send us pre-recorded messages. We will then see a video message from Ms. Brisna Kayaks, Gender Coordinator, Impunity Watch of Guatemala, which is a GAAMAC partner, and she will give us an overview of the America Regional Initiative work. And then we have also a video from Cecilia Jacob, Deputy Head of Department of International Relations of the Coral Bell School of Asia Pacific Affairs, Australian National University, who will give an overview of the Asia Pacific Study Group's work, which focuses precisely on hate speech. So warm welcome to all of you. And we will start with Mô. As a former GAAMAC chair, maybe Mô could tell us a little bit how these regional initiatives came about. Why I said they were a crucial component, but you could tell us why they are a crucial component for GAAMAC as a vehicle to engage state in atrocities prevention. So GAAMAC, so Mô, you are most welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Voila. Do you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia, dear Jamila, dear viewers, and dear community of practice of GAAMAC. I'm so happy to be here, and congratulations for the work done until now. Well, I would like indeed to recall some of the historical steps that led to the creation of this idea of regional working group. Before, maybe let's recall that before GAAMAC was created, you and me initiated as Minister of Foreign Affairs that we realized in Argentina, Tanzania, Switzerland, and Cambodia until 2012. And remember that in this time, in each of the region, there was strong expressions of we want prevention to be localized. It's not in the UN. And we need also to shape prevention from the ground in government. They gave several examples. And you may remember, Sylvia, that Professor Matarolo at this time, who is no more among us, but was so engaged and told us about the investigation commission from UNASUR after the Pando massacre that avoided really an escalation that could lead to atrocity. You remember also the initiatives in the peace agreements that Tanzania had been so involved in, notably through the former President Mkapa in the region. And remember also the Special Tribunal in Cambodia and the Center for Documentation. So these were somehow statements made from the region saying, hey guys, if I can say it like this, we are already practicing prevention. Maybe we're not calling it like this. And this is what was missing. And I think this is a big, I would say, understanding after these 4 regional meetings, is that we need a joint label. We need a kind of joint understanding of what we are doing. And this is what, and I will come back to it, this is what GAAMAC brought in. Huh? And this is pushed by that we decided also to create GAAMAC. Another element was important is at this time, remember that in the UN, the international community was very divided. The ones promoting responsibility to protect, or the responsibility to protect while, I don't remember exactly the exact wording, the ones working on prevention of genocide, on protection of civilians, and you name it. And even the ones only working on dealing with the legacy of Holocaust and genocides. So simply said, I think that all these elements, the call from the region to own and to really realize in a cooperative mood initiatives of prevention and define and shape how prevention on the ground could happen, plus the division and the difficulty to become concrete, is at the origin of GAAMAC in 2013. And it immediately allowed this very diverse community who needed to make a kind of qualitative step, I believe, to join efforts under the same label of atrocity prevention, with everyone keeping its identity. We also jointly declared that prevention shall happen now on the ground in each of our country, no more only a story of the global south. It happens everywhere. Ownership is key. Understanding of and embracing the local history, culture is absolutely crucial to be effective and efficient. It's important to generate ownership and ensure sustainability of prevention policy, and that can be only done when it's owned and really led by national actor. So we also said, and I know I have two more minutes, something very important, that no society is immune and that prevention begins at home. So de facto, the idea of the initiatives on the ground and regional initiatives was and is in the DNA of GAAMAC. And it was already there since the very beginning. This was the missing piece. So we know that we cannot prevent atrocity just by speaking and emitting resolutions in New York and Geneva or Vienna. That's basic, right? So now I wish to pay tribute really to Minister Liberata Mulamula, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She is, I think, the first one who understood the necessity to begin acting on that. Recall 2006 and 2010 also, when she realized a memorandum for the prevention of genocide undersigned by 12 countries that were part of this alliance. She is the one who first understood that, and there is continuity. Justice Jamila will speak about that, and this is the continuity of the work initiated by Ambassador Mulamula. Later, while we were preparing the last day of GAAMAC IV or 2, I think in Manila, with Adama, we thought, what could we do to really boost this wish to begin experiences on the ground? And we launched a kind of very fraternal competition among the participants and numerous participants in Manila. And we said, who would have the better idea to make prevention a reality on the ground at regional level would win a prize. I don't remember what the prize was, but the result is the African Working Group with its wonderful manual on prevention, on how to create prevention of atrocity at home. So I think it's very concrete, and these regional initiatives are, in a nutshell, cooperation between state and civil society and experts to begin, based on challenges that are happening in the region, efforts to address these accepted existing challenges that are existing in the regions, fitting with the local culture, fitting with the national policy and the legal framework. We have now three kinds of initiatives, Sylvia. The Africa Working Group, as I said before, and Justice Jamila will much more develop on that with a manual on best practices for the establishment of national mechanism. The America Groups is doing something fundamental. They are applying in their studies a gender lens prevention and atrocity prevention. We will hear them after. And the Asia Pacific Study Group is working on good practices in documenting and addressing hate speech in the region. Some have more governments in it, some have less or no government in it, as for now, but all this is work in progress. I hope, dear Sylvia, that a European group will emerge during this meeting. It would be indeed a real important signal, namely that it yet really understood that atrocity prevention is an issue for the global planet and not only for the global south. And that prevention begins at home. And we have seen with hate speech, incitement and discrimination, how important it is first, and this is coming out of the first day's meeting, we need to develop a common understanding, a conceptual framework to approach it, while meanwhile, the regional initiatives are already acting on it, so we can collect that lessons learned and their best practice. So what better can you have? An articulation between a joint conceptual approach and this regional initiative. And this joint conceptual approach that will emerge, that is emerging, should really tap into the work of this regional initiative. So that was it, Sylvia, in a nutshell, to begin the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mo, for this very concise and very necessary introduction, and also an important reminder, a very important reminder that GAAMAC, this global action, this global initiative, indeed started by being regional. And so it started with these regional seminars, and then we were coming together to create a global alliance, I would say. And thank you for also for drawing the attention about the importance of combining ownership, concrete and initiative, regional initiatives with global, the importance of working together by but also keeping each one identity. And that is extremely important. And also you said something that is extremely important, and maybe we can come back to this. Actually, we will come back to this in the subsequent panels, is how to achieve concrete results. Because how to provide a framework, but then achieve concrete results. And that is exactly what we are trying to do through these regional initiatives. And finally, thank you for reminding us that no society is immune, and that's why it's also important that we do develop these initiatives in all regions. And hopefully we will also have a new one emerging in this GAAMAC IV in the European context. And hate speech is exactly one issue that we see how it's affecting all regions. So thank you for this great introduction. We will come back to some of these issues in the discussion. But before going to Jamila, who will give us a good outlook of the concrete things that done by the African Working Group, we will, as I mentioned at the beginning, we will now hear from our colleague in Guatemala.
Good evening or good morning, depending from where you are joining us. I'm happy to greet you today in the event GAAMAC IV. And I'm glad to share with you some of the work that we've been doing from the regional initiative of the Americas. We have recently finished a policy paper on the prevention of sexual violence during conflicts, and where we draw lessons learned, particularly from Colombia and the Guatemalan experience. Both of these countries went through an armed conflict which greatly affected the lives of women, particularly indigenous women. Sexual violence was used as a weapon of war during these conflicts, but it also highlighted other forms of violence against women. These forms of violence had its root causes in the unequal power relations that exist in both countries. But we also see that these power dynamics are linked to racism and sexism as with other forms of violence and power relations. We have seen that in both countries, after the conflicts or after the signing of the peace, sexual violence continues to be part of the lives of women. It keeps impacting and affecting the lives of women. So it is important to understand the root causes of violence and how it continues after the signing of the peaces and how it continues in post-conflict societies. Victims and survivors of sexual violence have been victims of stigmatizations, and hate speech has been used to sort of promote and trigger violence against them, which continues with the violence against them. So it is important to dismount hate discourse and discrimination ideas against women and indigenous women. From our policy paper, we recommend that we continue to study the root causes, but also have a multidisciplinary approach, a victim-centered approach to guarantee that the needs and the visions of the women or how a violence-free country and society would look like. It is also important to think about innovative ways and creative ways of preventive measures so that violence does not continue to affect the lives of women and indigenous women.
Well, we thank Brisna for this clear example of how going concrete within one of the regional initiatives in the Americas. And now we will hear from Justice Jamila Mohammed. Jamila, building from Mo's remarks, what are the main milestones accomplished by the African Working Group?
Thank you, Judge Sylvia, and also Mo. Thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure for me to represent the African Working Group, and I would echo what Mo has said. GAAMAC was actually the missing piece, and no country or region is immune to genocide. And we do know that Africa has been seen to have many conflicts and cases of genocide. So it is an honor for me to chair the African Working Group, which falls under GAAMAC. And as mentioned by Mo, the African Working Group was emerged from the Philippines in 2016. This was in GAAMAC II. I was privileged to be a member of that delegation that was in Manila when the African Working Group was emerged and was established through the encouragement to a very large extent by Adama Dieng, who was the former UN Special Advisor on the prevention of genocide. He encouraged us, and Africa Regional Initiative emerged first, as Mo has said. And she wondered what the prize was. I would say the prize is that we have been able to share with the world, particularly Africa, a manual that establishes, that helps states and regional mechanisms establish architectures that are tailor-made to their own particular needs of the different countries. So that, I would say, is a prize. We may not have emerged with any prize as such from the meeting, but having come up with that, with a manual, that manual in itself is a prize. And we are happy with the progress that it has made, because many countries are adopting it increasingly to establish and manage their initiatives. So I would say the African Working Group, it seeks to promote the national atrocity prevention architectures and policies in different countries. And to a large extent, the manual helps us to a great extent in this, in that we're able to help other countries which have not established national mechanisms adopt the good practices and policies and best practices that are are in that manual. So sharing it with the world is actually sharing a lot towards prevention of genocide. We do know in many countries, there is internalization of conflict. So it's important in Africa, particularly, and of course other countries, for countries to work together, because what happens in one country affects other countries. I'm from Kenya, and we do know what's happening to our neighboring countries. What's happening to the countries is affecting us as the neighbors, and we are concerned with what is happening to our neighbors, because what happens to them affects us. And of course, as neighbors and as global citizens, we are concerned by what's happening to them. And oftentimes, those who suffer are the vulnerable: women, children, and other innocent civilians. So it is a matter of concern, and I am happy to be part of this missing link or solution to ensuring that prevention of genocide is put in place. I find that prevention of genocide is quite similar to prevention of pandemics. We are better off preventing. The alternative is unthinkable. The alternative is not something we want to happen to any of us. So we have to march on with prevention. We have to do whatever it takes. It may be difficult to quantify, but I do know that it works. Prevention works. And as the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. In this particular case, we do know it's a matter of life and death in many instances. The African Regional Initiative is the eldest of the regional initiatives under GAAMAC. It is robust, and the manual helps make the Africa Regional Initiative very well known and recognized for the role that it does play to many countries. So it actually opens doors for us and markets the Africa Regional Initiative, African Working Group. I thank Ambassador and Minister Liberata for her support. She has continued to engage with us. She is the patron of the African Working Group. She's continued to engage with us and to share her contacts, particularly in the ICGLR, the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region. As Judge Sylvia introduced me, I'm the chair of the Kenya National Committee on the Prevention of Genocide, which falls under the ICGLR. It is a committee of 12 member countries that have worked together to ensure that we prevent conflict in the 12 member countries, which is prone to a lot of conflict. The African Working Group's composition is diverse, and I believe the diversity is our strength. It's made up of different actors. We have government, we have genocide prevention, national mechanisms, we have national human rights architecture, and we also have UN treaty bodies who are members. So we have that diversity is really enriching, and it is our strength, which we leverage on to ensure that our reach is wide and also goes deep and covers the wide spectrum in the area of prevention. So having that diversity has helped open many areas for us. Recently, in June this year, the African Working Group was able to support or facilitate and work together with our members from Cote d'Ivoire, and some of our members, even from the Kenya National Committee, were on hand to share some of the good work that we do, which includes a genocide prevention legislation. So we have shared with the Cote d'Ivoire, who are considering enacting legislation on genocide prevention, and we were able to work together with 20 newly elected ministers, and that was, in my view, very impactful, because I believe those 20 newly elected members of parliament of Cote d'Ivoire will have a wide reach. And once they're converted and understand what genocide prevention means, or what genocide means, and the need to prevent it, I believe it has a trickle-down effect and will cover many, will reach very, very wide. So that particular training, I believe, will go a long way. And eventually, we do hope that Kenya will come up with a genocide prevention bill It is in the process of enactment. Côte d'Ivoire, as I said, is also considering, and we are continuing our discussions with them to ensure that the different countries go a long way in coming up with the genocide prevention legislation. So the African Working Group has an ambitious roadmap, which includes to bring on board all regions of Africa. We would like to ensure that no one is left behind, because we believe that working together is our strength. We learn from each other, we share good practices, best practices, and lessons learned. So we can strengthen each other, support each other, and work together to ensure that whatever happens in our different countries, we are able to work together and ensure that we prevent genocide happening in our member countries. The African Working Group is made up of 25 members, and it has a reach of 10 countries from Africa. But we are hoping to reach all member states of Africa towards genocide prevention, to be part of African Working Group, and to ensure that they have genocide prevention mechanisms in place, tailor-made to their specific needs and their country situations. So we also encourage member states to accede to the Genocide Convention, because many countries in Africa have not yet acceded or ratified the Genocide Convention. And we are working towards ensuring that more countries accede to the Genocide Prevention mechanism, to the Genocide Convention, and respect it and uphold all its values and requirements. We also facilitate member states to form the national mechanisms. We share good practices. We visit the countries that need our support. And so we have a wide reach, and we are a number of have been very committed members of the African Working Group. So we are ready to help others form their own national mechanisms and to share whatever lessons we have. We also develop and establish linkages with GAAMAC, the other regional initiatives such as Asia Pacific, Europe, and Latin America, and share best practices. We also create collaboration with initiatives and organizations such as the African Union, the East African Community, EAC, the ECOWAS, Economic Community of West Africa States, the ICGLR, as I alluded to earlier, the UN, including the UN Special Advisor's Office. In fact, the UN Special Advisor was a committed member of the Kenya National Committee. So we are happy to work together. And the UN Special Advisor's Office is actually supporting the Kenya National Committee in the enactment of legislation, and also having peace fora in different hotspots in Kenya. And I know they do that in different countries, including Tanzania. And I know they also support Uganda in the enactment of legislation in Uganda. So we also aim to formulate technical and resource mobilization from different partners, such as the EADB and the European Union, and so that we ensure that we work efficiently to carry out the very wide and important mandate of the GAAMAC African Working Group. Thank you all, and thank you, Sylvia. I hope I've answered your question in as much as possible, but I'm happy to take any other questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jamila. You have really gave us a very, very good description, overview of the immense work that is being done by the African Working Group. And in very concrete ways, you mentioned that the African Group is a robust initiative, and really it is, because and we could hear that you are working in many areas, from the manual to legislation, to promote also ratification for an international treaty, hugely important as the Genocide Convention, and then your linkages with other regional initiatives, but also with regional and international organizations. So this is huge work, and it's very concrete work. So I really commend you for this, and for giving this extremely comprehensive overview. Now we will hear from the study group in Asia Pacific. We will have this video play to learn more about this initiative in this region.
Hello, my name is Cecilia Jacob. I'm a research fellow at the Australian National University. On behalf of the Asia Pacific Working Group of GAAMAC, I'm pleased to present to you the report titled Preventing Hate Speech and Discrimination, Lessons on Promoting Tolerance and Respect for Diversity in the Asia Pacific. The full report can be downloaded from the GAAMAC website. As in many parts of the world, the Asia-Pacific region has experienced the rise of populist and militarized governments, coinciding with the rise in hate speech and incitement to violence. The persecution of ethnic and religious minorities persists in many countries in the region, and sadly, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many underlying tensions that has lowered tolerance and respect. Hate speech and incitement to violence, when tolerated or promoted by political and religious leaders, is an important risk factor for atrocities. Our team of contributors from across the region have examined 6 country case studies to understand the patterns and dynamics of hate speech, to identify key drivers, and to provide targeted recommendations for combating hate speech. The countries included are Myanmar, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, and Pakistan. Some key findings from the report include: first, legacies of impunity and the construction of historical narratives that denigrate minority groups shape and form the content of hate speech. Accountability for historical grievances is crucial and must include reshaping the narratives of nationhood and belonging when they are exclusionary and discriminatory. Second, legal and governance institutions can determine whether a situation is conducive to hate speech and whether authorities have the capacity to mitigate the escalation of violence. Political leadership must reinforce legal protections and uphold fair process to legitimize existing legal and institutional protections. We offer wide-ranging recommendations for institutional and legal reform and implementation in the report. Third, we show that external pressures from the international community, including governments, international organizations, civil society, and faith-based actors, can yield important outcomes for persecuted minorities. However, in most instances, the international community has paid little attention to episodes of communal violence or systematic violations of the human rights of ethnic and religious minorities. We recommend that members of the international community consistently employ diplomatic and public platforms to call out deeply entrenched patterns of discrimination and targeting within states. Finally, social media is now the key platform for the dissemination of hate speech and incitement to violence in the Asia-Pacific region. State and non-state actors must increase their understanding of how these platforms are being used, and greater regulation is needed to govern hate speech in the digital space. There are many more findings and targeted recommendations found in the report. We hope that you find this report to be a useful resource in your endeavours to strengthen atrocity prevention in your respective countries and institutions. We also thank GAAMAC for their support to bring this report together. Thank you.
Well, we thank Cecilia Jacob for her overview on this very specific initiative in the Study Asia Pacific group. We are going to have the opportunity to have discussions in the breakout rooms that are going to follow this introductory panel. But we have a few minutes left, very few, 3 minutes. So maybe I would like to give the opportunity to Mo and Jamila, if you want to add something or highlight something that could also trigger more discussions in the breakout rooms. Mo or Jamila, who wishes to add something, if you wish. Mo or Jamila, you want to? Yes.
Just in a nutshell, thank you, Justice Jamila. You give us such a good understanding, and I just want to say that if really it becomes possible to multiply this kind of initiatives, then we can really begin maybe to dare to say never again. Never again means nothing if we don't act on the ground. And sometimes I even feel we should be ashamed to say never again, because we cannot just have good intentions. We need to practice and we need to make this a reality. So the regional initiatives are key to this. They are a reservoir of knowledge, of good practice that can inform resolutions, that can inform joint conceptual approaches and all that. And they are the proof that prevention can have concrete results. And we have heard it now. Now, just a little word for Europe. And in Switzerland, for example, we really wish to create a platform for prevention, gathering actors who are working in fields which are important to prevention nowadays. For example, in the field of hate speech, discrimination, and by convening them, while they remain totally themselves, doing what they have to do, and trying to conceptualize all this work under the heading of prevention, I think we could make a difference. And I hope that in GAAMAC V, Switzerland and Michel Gautret, who is here, the president of the Association of GAAMAC, will be able to come and say, hey, I want to present you the work that the Swiss Prevention of Atrocity Working Group is doing. And we have been very effective, for example, on working with youth on preventing hate speech and fake news. That would be extraordinary, a little step, but concrete and meaningful. So that was my little conclusion message.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for again underlying the importance of concrete results. Jamila, do you want to add something?
Thank you, Judge Sylvia. Yes, I would add that it's time to move from rhetoric to action. And I believe regional initiatives are key because they work from the ground up, and they work depending on the peculiar circumstances and situations of the different countries. So each country is encouraged to form its own regional initiative or its own initiative, country-specific initiative, and thereafter group together as a region to ensure that genocide and conflicts are prevented in the particular country, depending on its own peculiar circumstances. But as I had said earlier, we are always ready to share best practices. We have the manual. So with all that, we are ready to work together with any member states or any organizations that are ready to start or who would like to start the process of forming national mechanisms for the prevention of genocide. Because again, we repeat, there is no country or region that is immune to genocide. So we must all prepare. Whether we have had genocide in our countries or in our regions, we should know that no country is immune. It can creep on anyone. It's a process, but it can happen anywhere. So let's work together to ensure we prevent it the world over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both of you from these final remarks about going from rhetoric to concrete action. And this is exactly what we hope to have a discussion about in this different working groups. The Africa Breakout Room will be moderated by Justice Jamila Mohammed, who you have just heard until now, PAV interpretation, English, French. Then the Asia Pacific Breakout Room will be moderated by Ms. Savita Ponde from the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect, who is a member of the steering group of GAAMAC. The Americas Breakout Room will be moderated by Ambassador Shara Duncan from Costa Rica, member of the steering group as well. Please note this room will have interpretation English, Spanish. The Europe Breakout Room will be moderated by Mr. Martin Menneke from Denmark, who is also a member of the steering group of GAAMAC. And the thematic Breakout Room will be moderated by Dr. Jennifer Leaning, from the FXB Center for Health and Human Rights, who is also a member of the steering group. So I encourage you to have meaningful, candid discussions and to come back with concrete recommendations for actions, initiatives, and how we can work together in each region to support atrocity prevention.
Welcome back from that break, and I'm now going to hand over to Mô Bleeker, who is the former chair of GAAMAC and who has the responsibility now as the special envoy for dealing with the past and prevention of atrocities at the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs. So Mo, please, we'd very much like to hear from you, and that you will now moderate and lead the results session.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm very pleased to take over and to facilitate this session. I hope you hear me. I have connection problems. So maybe what I suggest is that we go from one initiative to the other, from one working group to the other, and begin with the Americas.
Thank you, Mo, and hello to everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Well, I am very pleased to share that in the Americas breakout session, both Argentina and Costa Rica were present, and this allowed for a very specific regional discussion, of course, about the genocide prevention and mass atrocities prevention in the region. To start with, representatives from Costa Rica's Ministry of Foreign Affairs mentioned that the Latin American Network for the Prevention of Genocide, a regional initiative to deal with this agenda, needs and must be strengthened. There was a common understanding with Argentina in this regard. Among other topics, the Latin American Network identifies the indigenous peoples of the Americas as a population that faces risks and challenges, obviously for several reasons. Given that this is a common challenge faced by many Latin American countries, and not only, there is much more to do about it from the Latin American Network for the Prevention of Genocide. Argentina mentioned existing conversations on this regard between the Auschwitz Institute for the Prevention of Genocide, that works as a secretariat of the Latin American Network, and the National Institute for Indigenous Affairs in Argentina to develop a training course about the promotion and protection of the human rights of indigenous peoples. Costa Rica's, moreover, foreign ministry representatives mentioned a very interesting initiative they carried out recently in the format of a conference series on the prevention of violence, targeting public officials both working on the National Commission of Human Rights and the National Commission of International Humanitarian Law. This conference series in Costa Rica was partly motivated due to the increased violence experienced in Costa Rica against public officials during the COVID-19 pandemic. Representatives from Argentina pointed out that, in part, hate speech and violence had also been exacerbated in Argentina during the pandemic context, and pointed out, unfortunately, some very specific and, for the time being, limited warring tendencies in the political arena related to hate speech. As a common proposal, both countries agreed on the need to strengthen the Inter-American System of Human Rights, that is, both the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and the Inter-American Commission. There are indeed rulings of the Inter-American Court about genocide prevention that can and must be rendered more visible, as well as the fact that there is a reservoir, Argentina and Costa Rica believe, of experts and expertise in the Inter-American System of Human Rights that can be definitely more widely shared in the multilateral fora. To end with, Argentina, as a very practical and concrete example, as well as the conference series in Costa Rica, mentioned that in the gender violence prevention field, a law was passed at the national level to prevent, obviously, gender-based violence. And in this regard, a mandatory training course was launched for all public officials to make as a mandatory prerequisite in their public servant careers. This is a very concrete example that could be replicated with other topics within the atrocity prevention agenda. Thank you very much. I'm sure that time is up or about to be.
Sorry, thank you so much, Martin. Wonderful, to the point. The only thing I would tell you in return is that when you will send the exact wording of this new step, I would say, in the regional initiative, don't forget to indicate very concretely the indicators for results. What are the concrete, tangible results that you together want to achieve. So in 2 years, we can look back and say, wow, actually you did it, or there were difficulties, and we can analyze that together. But wonderful, I find it particularly interesting to really strengthen the capacity of regional institutions, such as the Inter-American Court, notably, and to use, and the Commission, and to use this reservoir of experts. Concrete expected results will be also very useful when you report in a written form on that. Let's maybe turn to Europe, bouncing from one side of the ocean. Who is going to report on Europe? Is Martin there, or is Kate Ferguson reporting on that?
Yes, I think it's me, Mo.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, we had a really rich conversation. I think we were represented by a good handful of European positions and state and non-state. And we all agree that there is a real urgency here for lots of reasons to kind of make sure that not just within the community of GAAMAC, but far more broadly, more is being done to kind of bridge the lessons and expertise of the atrocity prevention world and the really worrying situations that we see in Europe. And I think within that rich conversation, what really became very clear is that if an initiative is to emerge, whether out of GAAMAC or from Europe, in this arena, the core challenge must be of communicating within and to Europe and to the rest of the world that Europe is not immune from atrocity risks, and that very particularly many of those warning signs that are so recognizable to our community of practice that indicate the antecedents of extremism, of identity-based violence, of mass atrocity crimes are already present across Europe in many different forms. And so therefore that was sort of the core goal, I think, that our group kind of got to, even if, of course, within the space of 45 minutes, we did not resolve how we would do that. But I think that was the core objective. And we recognize that if that's the objective, then actually we can be quite creative in how that those changes to political culture, to practical policy application, whether the policies of NGOs or the policies of states can be achieved, how we can bring together these communities of atrocity prevention and others that work within fields of hatred and discrimination might look like. Coming down like one level below that was, I think, kind of consensus about the need for an added value of the ability for this initiative to act as credible and effective means of communicating information to those that need to receive it, relating to monitoring risks, identifying risks, communicating how to respond to risks, and the real kind of emphasis on how important that coordinating function then is within that action. And you know, there were some examples of best practice shared within the group, but we really were drawing on some of the lessons we can learn from the other regional initiatives that are already kind of underway, and we look forward to having those kind of cross regional dialogues and interactions so we can learn that. I think that there was an acknowledgement that while the language of atrocity prevention is sometimes alienating and challenging in the sphere of Europe, that is not a challenge that is unique to Europe. I think all of us in the community of atrocity prevention spend too much of our time explaining what we mean by atrocities, that they need to be prevented everywhere and that there is a need to prevent rather than just respond. That is not just a European challenge. And again, learning from other regions how normalizing and sometimes reframing that language has been helpful and efficient would be really important. The language of identity-based violence, I think, is a good framing there because, of course, it encompasses rather than excludes and dilutes. And I think that there was the acknowledgement that Europe isn't starting from scratch here. There is such a very rich movement and set of contributions that already engage in specifically the fight against atrocities, whether in Europe or whether outside of Europe, and also the kind of vibrancy and richness of the human rights movement in Europe is something to be acknowledged. And so more it is about connecting and moving away from a point of disconnection, and how we can, in doing so, bring a framing that can then convince Europe and also other parts of the world that these risks both exist in Europe and can be responded to and prevented. The first concrete outcome of that conversation will be that we will have a follow-up forum where we have more than 45 minutes, hopefully before Christmas, but we all have busy schedules, so we will see. And that is our commitment from Europe to you. I stop there.
Thank you, Kate. Wonderful. I begin with the end. You will have a follow-up forum. And you began saying if there would be an initiative to come out. So you are saying there will be a forum to continue the idea. So I encourage you to make from this if a reality, and to come out of your next forum where you will talk about that with concrete ideas on how you can shape what I'm hearing to become a kind of platform. Platforms are these spaces exactly who are doing what you are saying. They are generating common language, common understanding, common working principles. Everyone can remain continuing what he, she does, and that they can become mutually complementary and act in also very much attuned with their regional context. I find it very important, and I'm so happy to hear that it's going to become a reality, and it could be, as you have been saying it so often, a complementary element to the other regional initiative. So keep us posted. And again, I would say, what are the tangible goals that you would like to reach in terms of tangible results? And I do believe that this identity-based violence terminology is indeed very convenient, and this connecting elements that you have been framing constantly are very important. So welcome to a possible potential European platform of prevention of identity-based violence, and I wish you good luck, and we look forward to hear from you. And let's fasten our seatbelt and go to Africa, where Justice Jamila Mohammed will report to us on what has been discussed in its African Working Group. Thank you so much. You have the floor.
Felistas is presenting. Felistas is our rapporteur.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mo. I was saying Felistas is our rapporteur, and I see her on.
Okay.
Felistas. Okay, sorry, Felistas. Welcome, and
good
you have the floor.
morning and good afternoon. Thank you, Mo, for welcoming me. The African Working Group had a very good discussion where we started with the chair explaining the vision of the African Working Group, which is to build and grow a Pan-African Working Group with a robust representation from all regions of Africa. And in addition to other activities, also African Working Group focus on increasing awareness towards efforts to prevent genocide. Where discussions on experiences on genocide prevention and priorities, we had an experience from Uganda where we are informed that the Ugandan committee was instrumental during elections, and it would be good to learn from other ex-colleagues on how they respond to tensions leading to elections. And Uganda is also one of the first committees that was established, and it can take experiences and lessons learned from it. We had experience from Ghana, particularly from Kof Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, where we were informed that the center conducts training on the responsibility to protect and they bring together armed forces, civilians, civil societies to share experiences and conduct trainings on responsibility to protect. That the center also is part of, as part of its capacity building, draft researches on atrocity prevention, and the African Working Group is a crucial platform to bring actors together, practitioners and policymakers together, so that together we can prevent atrocity crimes. And Frank explained that the center will continue to work with the GAAMAC and African Working Group in partnership to continue efforts raising awareness on atrocity prevention, and more efforts need to be done to address the accountability gap. From Kenya, we heard from Ms. Rosalind Amandi, speaking for the National Committee. She explained that there's need for partnership for atrocity prevention and to support the work of national committees. And then she appreciated the partnership they have with the Office of the Special Advisor on Prevention of Genocide, who assisted them in drafting the legislation on prevention of genocide and atrocity crimes. She also appreciated being part of GAAMAC. From West Africa again, we have Frank explaining that the West can learn from the experiences of the East Africa under the umbrella of ICGLR countries. And that it will be good to have country visits in all sub-regions of the continent so we can assess where the countries are in terms of atrocity prevention and what key stakeholders are involved, so we can draw specific recommendations for engagement and what to prioritize. And this came out as one of the key issues that we took with us. And also the need to learn from each other and to conduct in-country visits. And it was explained that recently GAAMAC African Working Group activities such as the ones in Cote d'Ivoire could be beneficial for other countries as well. The chair reiterated the fact that there are consequences for committing hate speech, and that in Kenya there are discussions on criminalizing hate speech, so to prosecute hate speech, and that Kenya can share experience from their countries. This is what we have discussed in the group. Unfortunately, I was having technical difficulties, so if I left out anything or if there's anything to be added, and I thank the support office for taking notes for me when I was having difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felista, Asante. Thank you, really, really very much.
Karibu.
I think you are the forefront runners, and you are basically our mothers and fathers in prevention. And I think you are teaching us a lot, and you are telling about how you continue and how you become very concretely involved in national situations with the involvement of national stakeholders. I find this remarkable. I would wish, Felicitas, and I would wish Justice Jamila, that you could come and visit some of our countries in Europe or in the north of America to tell us how to do that and to share your lessons learned. And, so maybe you should also give some space in your program of action on that, disseminating your knowledge and training people from the north, the global north, to be able to be well equipped to take on the prevention endeavor in our region. So thank you very much. I see that the time is passing quite quickly, and we will jump now in teletransportation, all of us, directly to Asia. And who will report on Asia? You have the floor.
Hi there, that's me.
Iwan, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Mo. So our discussion centered on the report on hate speech by the Asia Pacific Working Group. And essentially the recommendations of this report outline the need for states to build regulatory frameworks on hate speech, emphasizes the protection of vulnerable minority groups, seek conflict resolution, and build action plans for hate speech, in addition to supporting civil society. And actually, our discussion, which led on from that, which was very lively given the current time in Asia at the moment. Our kind of main discussion was centered on how we can further galvanize the study group by finding different actors in the region to take forward the report's recommendations. So a component of this could be dissemination, to find further civil society and academic partners who can lead locally on it, as opposed to being in a position from outside, perhaps. And one of the recommendations made was that perhaps we could couch this in technocratic terms in a way to support states to deal with hate speech, as opposed to being necessarily a political intervention. With that in mind, obviously the difficulties for civil society groups operating in the region was also considered, and we also talked about how regional organizations, or sort of organizations that might bridge to regional organizations, could help in that respect. I'm mindful of the time, so I'll keep this short. But the last point is to note that the report is available in the Innovation Square in the Asia Pacific booth under documents, should anyone like to have a look at it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Iwan. I think you are a testimony of how difficult it has been to begin and to continue the work with such a constancy, and a decision that you had taken to continue working on that. Your group has regularly mentioned the difficulty to get states on board, and you are very, very clear and transparent on this issue. I was wondering whether the suggestion of Vitit Manbaran, who is based in Bangkok, could be of any use first to also connect with the existing network of human rights commissions, because they would be so keen to, I suppose, to cooperate with you, and maybe also to map out which states actually who would be inclined basically to cooperate on this issue, because it's good for them, could join the group. You are indeed working in very difficult situations, huh? And do you want to name the countries on which you are working again, for all of us to know?
Yeah, of course. So the report itself picks up on case studies from India, Pakistan, Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines. Okay,
so you are really working on very, very, very tough context, where the multiple threats are existing. And therefore, I think that having states who are friends of prevention could be maybe also helpful for you, because you are working on such difficult issues. But we are with you. And if there is any help that can come out from other regional group, count with each of us and all of them, I would say it like that. And so thank you very much. And let's now go to and fly to the thematic area, which has been somehow cross-regional in its thinking. And I would like to know who is going to report, because I don't see Jennifer.
I am the one, Andrea Bartoli.
Very good. Thank you, Andrea.
You're very welcome. So it was a very interesting frame, because the group came around concerns of Jennifer's to really move GAAMAC as a system around themes and projections, and even sharing concerns. In that sense, there is an old trend of GAAMAC, that is this idea of the big tent and letting many different threads, coexist at the same time. But in the end, the conversation took two very interesting different orientation. One in the direction of a more self-conscious North America realization, right? You know, in North America, you have actors like the Atrocities Prevention Study Group. You know, you have actors that have thought prevention and contributed to prevention in different ways. And it could be good for GAAMAC to be intentional about creating a group that is a North American one. There was an interesting Canadian US conversation in the group, and it is possible that you will see something moving in that direction as an exploration, you know, to have this Canada-US conversation of two countries that are so similar and so different. And so that was certainly one element that came out of the conversation. But the other one was even more fundamental about prevention per se, right? So we use prevention, obviously, we practice prevention, we are about prevention. There is a fundamental link between prevention and the identity of GAAMAC, but it's clearly not enough to say prevention. There is a need to explain prevention. There is a need to understand prevention better. There is a need to prove prevention, right? Is prevention working? When is prevention working? What are the results of prevention? How can you make sure that prevention can be measured, and so on and so forth? These are somehow complicated technical problems on one side, and on the other, necessary contribution to the conversation for GAAMAC as such, and for individual countries and region as GAAMAC move forward. So it's going to be seen what will come next, but a proposal has been made of creating a research group, or a working group, or some form of orientation that will gather knowledge around prevention as a non-paper, as a paper, as a research project, that will do this effort of gathering the best knowledge around prevention and proposing it internally to GAAMAC and externally to all the interlocutors that we are working with, individual states, regional actors, the UN system, and so on and so forth. So it was a fascinating conversation. I must say that it was in the best style of GAAMAC. I cannot but conclude with a note about the revelation that was given to me, that the place where Sylvia and Claire and the others are doing the stage, now this wonderful angle with the nature that you see on the video when you do the conversation, is actually the office of GAAMAC. This was not the stage things for this particular conversation. Is actually where they work. I must say that coming from my apartment and constrained in my little place, I felt very much in sync with this effort to blend the best of human mind, the best of design, the best of what is possible to one another for the purpose of prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. A very complete synthesis of this thematic working group I was involved in. Interesting. So we have basically a series of initiatives on the ground that are becoming stronger and stronger, more experienced. They're also sensing what is difficult, what can be done, the risk and opportunities. Some of them are working in real time, in real context, and the Americas, when we think about Guatemala and a situation where it's extremely difficult to be human rights defenders, for example, or to engage for prevention. But you continue, you accumulate lessons learned, good practices, and you are in touch with each other. We will maybe see, and I would like to say, we will see the emergence of a new European platform initiative on preventing identity-based violence, multiple ways, connecting with existing actors. So that's very promising. And I hope that we will also witness the creation of a sub-regional group, Canada and the US, working on very important issues that are to be dealt with now and have to do with also hate speech, also discrimination against minorities and refugees, and so on. That would be a very important asset. Last but not least, I believe that this reflection on prevention, while it needs to be further tackled, is, in my sense, something unique that GAAMAC could bring in, as GAAMAC has been really the place where we have made of prevention a reality. So thank you, all of you, so much. I know we have not made justice to the richness of the work you are doing, and I hope that in GAAMAC V, there will be, I don't know, a whole day consecrated to this regional initiative, so that really the ones who are not in can really understand the in-depth and the variety and the diversity and the impact of this regional initiative. So thank you so much for all you have been doing, and we keep on together. And I pass it now to our maître de cérémonie, Claire, for you to take over. Wonderful to have you there, and I pass you these wonderful initiatives in your hands for your further blessing. Thank you so much.
Merci, Mo. So thank you very much for moderating that discussion. And you've heard that there are those regional conversations that went on today, and tomorrow there's going to be some more regional conversations. The Asia Pacific Study Group and the Africa Working Group are going to meet tomorrow, and they're going to present their reports on hate speech. And you can visit the Asia Pacific Group booth at 9 a.m. and the Africa Working Group at 12 p.m. So that's Central European time if you would like to get to those sessions. That's tomorrow, but there's still much happening today, and there are various workshops that are going on today. And you can see some of those that have come on the screen now. The effects of media framing on public engagement with atrocity prevention and response. Very interesting, and my background as a former journalist, so I encourage you to attend that one. Responding to contemporary forms of racism, xenophobia, and anti-migrant hate speech, and the role of religious and faith-based actors in atrocity prevention at the national level, challenges and good practices. And then after, in about an hour's time, the Holocaust and mass atrocities today, hate speech, fake images and propaganda, and new technologies, new emerging atrocity threats, and how to prevent them. So I encourage you to attend those workshops, also to attend some of the regional sessions tomorrow morning. And then European time, Sylvia and I will be back for the closing ceremony, where Sylvia will be giving a preview of the outcome document, and I'll be recapping some of the main messages along with Sylvia. But just to say thank you, everybody who's been attending today. Do keep and stay tuned and join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock Central European time. That is 8 o'clock in the morning in the Americas and 2100 in Asia Pacific. But from all of us here at the moment, that's all. Goodbye. Have a good rest.